Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naketa Thigpen, Relationship Manager, Release Success Coach, and go-to on all things work-life balance. I'm ecstatic about bringing you this mini power punch to help awaken your inner superwoman or hero for all of our fearless men followers out there on this whimsical Wednesday. Today we have the distinguished honor, let me highlight that, distinguished honor to chat with Stu Lipkin, a financial problem solver extraordinaire for small businesses and Fortune 500 corporations. This is a live call and it's exclusive to subscribers of NaketaThigpen.com, and we will take questions throughout. This power punch will be 30 minutes, so remember to listen to the call for questions and don't be shy. Our experts are busy professionals with a wealth of knowledge on tap, and they are eager to share, but only when we can catch them, so make sure you speak up. Press *6 to unmute yourself and be sure that your background is free from noise. We love the light that's going around you. We just don't want to hear it during the call. All right, let's jump in and kickstart your success. Welcome, Stu, and how are you?
I want to thank you for that incredible introduction. I've got a lot to live up to here, and I'm excited to do so.
Oh, thank you. You're going to be amazing because I've talked with you, and I know how wonderful you are on every single level.
Well, thanks.
Do you want to take a moment and just tell everybody a little bit about your background before we jump in?
Sure. I started my professional career in public accounting for about 5-6 years. Was able to get my CPA, and from there moved into private industry. Spent about 16-17 years in the food industry, and then moved around a little bit through technology, some retail, real estate, and my last W-2 position was in a company that recycled catalytic converters. I am currently married. I have 3 grown children that are all married and 5 grandchildren.
You are a busy father/husband/grandpa. That is awesome.
Exactly, and loving every minute of it.
I know that's right. Well, happy belated Father's Day, as you know you're going into your next level of self. Any more grandbabies on the way?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm probably scaring someone right now. That's okay. All right, let's jump right in. So, some of the things that have come up, and these are based on client experiences as well as conversations that I've had, I kind of deem them as kitchen conversations. They come up off the grid when you're not necessarily speaking business. But there's some commonalities, I think, that I've seen, but you're the expert in this area as a CPA, a CFO, financial consultant, and you work in HR. You're doing these amazing things. Have you noticed any kind of patterns or common financial management mistakes that have been similar for big businesses and entrepreneurs?
The one commonality that I see all the time is the inability to execute. The entrepreneur, and when I say the inability to execute, is for many reasons. There are similarities, but for different reasons, I should say, that it's that inability. I'll give you some examples. The small entrepreneur is fighting day to day to try and keep the doors open, has 1,000 things that need to be accomplished, is just running around like a chicken without a head, with the understanding that their product and service is what they're good at, but many components of what they're doing are not their areas of expertise. And they are constantly fighting against that battle because they don't always know which way to turn. The larger corporate executive has a support team, and in most cases that support team is doing a good job for them, but their inability to execute comes from too many layers of bureaucracy in many large corporations. So while they want to be able to be quick and nimble and make some decisions, in most cases they are just not able to do so because of what's going on within their entity.
Would that be the red tape that we hear of quite often, that, there's all this red tape to get through to move forward with those decisions?
Exactly. It's a combination of red tape, and in some cases it's just corporate politics. People want to push themselves up the ladder, and everybody's got different viewpoints, and instead of finding ways that they can, work together, they're constantly fighting amongst each other.
Is there a way, there's always these secret hidden talents that people have. Some are actually in school for it, or they went to school for it, and maybe they transitioned and found themselves in a different role in the company, and they see these mistakes happening, and they have some really good quality ideas to bring forth to the table. Is there, based on your experience, is there any safe place for people who know they have those skills and see these unfortunate spirals happening, that they should go to inside of a company and say, listen, I have a background in accounting, or I have a background in economics, or whatever, the specific financial topic area is, and go to HR, for instance, or to the CFO and say, I would like to assist you with this? Or is that a complete off the grid, you just don't do that, you don't walk into someone else's lane?
The answer is it depends on the company. From what I'm seeing today, companies are getting a lot more aggressive in utilizing the talents of their people. They're recognizing the fact that the employees are the key component to the company, even more so than in many cases the customers might be. And because of that, they're opening those doors. They're trying to reach out and find that talent and develop that talent within the company. Larger corporations, some of them are still not so forward-thinking, and they base what they're doing is more based upon traditional approaches of finding talent, and that becomes more difficult. I would always suggest that if somebody has a hidden talent, start with their immediate supervisor, talk to them about it, see what can be done. Sometimes there are formal programs within the company that can help them get to where they want to go. But if they're hitting that roadblock and that barrier and they're just not finding anywhere they can go, that may be a sign for them to start looking for another opportunity outside that company.
Well, that's a good segue. So wondering about that, I know you have an entrepreneurial background as well. Are there some key signs or, flags that come up for you internally that say, what, this is the time to jump out there. It's just not working in the confines of the structure of this environment, whether it's a quote-unquote corporation or nonprofit or whatever it is, but you kind of feel handicapped a little bit from utilizing your skill areas and your expertise to the fullest ability that you can. So is there a moment when you say, what, this sign, that sign, and the other happen, let's go?
Yeah, and typically what I would suggest, if people feel as though they've done everything they can to go to the channels and reach out to the people and try and achieve what they're trying to achieve, and they're just totally frustrated and for whatever reason being ignored, if they're not happy with what they're doing day to day, then they shouldn't be in that position. And that's usually the telltale sign. If you're not happy in your job and you feel as though you've done everything you can within that company, you need to find something new to do.
I agree on multiple levels. I mean, you have to be careful with figuring out if you're really ready to take on the responsibility of entrepreneurship, because that's a whole nother bag of learning.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to have the right mindset to be an entrepreneur. In the last several years that I've been working very closely with the entrepreneur community, I've come to realize a lot of the battles that they're up against. And prior to that, in my previous career, where I was working in larger corporate environments, I didn't quite understand all of those battles that the entrepreneur was going up against, and didn't appreciate it. So today, it's a very different environment. There are great opportunities out there for the entrepreneur, but you have to have the right mindset going into it.
Absolutely. Do you have any suggestion for what things they need to keep in mind if they're considering? They haven't jumped in the 10-feet pool without a paddle yet, but they're really at the brink.
Best thing they can do is talk to their inner circle. Get as much feedback as they can. And with that being said, try and find people within your inner circle that are positive thinking people, because there are always a lot of people out there that are going to tell you that you can't do it, you're being ridiculous for trying to do it. Those are not the people that you necessarily want to talk to. You need to listen to them just to hear their comments, but don't focus on why you can't do something. You need to talk to the people who tell you, sounds like a good idea, here's some recommendations, here's how you can go back and to do it, and give you that kind of support.
Absolutely. Now, what about those, the yesers? That's, my own little Naketa-ism right there. But the people who are just, they're not really interested in giving you great feedback. They're just saying, oh, yes, Stu, go for it. Sure. Sounds good to me. They're not processing, they're not thinking, they're not giving you anything constructive. They're just not, they're afraid of conflict most likely, and they're not trying to get into any push and pull with you, but that's
Sure.
not helpful either.
Exactly, and that's a great point. And you have to be able to identify, the people you're talking to. How valuable are they to you as far as giving you good feedback? Everybody knows the yesers as you indicated, and you have to take them for what they're worth.
Mhm. I agree with that. So we have, this was a question that came up more than one time, and I always have different ways that I answer it based on the person that's in front of me and the personality I know. And you and I have touched on it in our own, sidebar conversations. But so we have these Kickstart Success followers. Of course, this is a Kickstart Success call. A lot of them are professionals for well over 15 years in high-level professions, lawyer, accountants, doctors, nurses, you name it. And some of them have been simultaneous entrepreneurs for over 10 years. And by simultaneous, I'm literally saying they've been in their profession for X number of years and started their businesses, close to 10 years ago, while still maintaining a professional license. But the common challenge that comes up for a lot of them is this fear that they won't succeed in their business if they did decide to take it kind of full throttle, for lack of a better phrase, because the clients they're attracting are always saying, I can't afford that. Do you have a different package? Can you lower it? Can we customize it? Can we tailor it? So, of course, what happens is they kind of give in. They tailor it, so they have the clients, so they have the success stories or testimonials or case studies, whatever it is they're looking for. And now they're feeling like, well, I could never do this full-time because of the amount of work I would have to go in and do it at these prices because I'm just not able to get, the price that I feel the product is worth.
Right.
Any suggestions for those folks?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Naketa, because whenever I talk to a business owner, one of the key questions I always have for that business is, what is their differentiator that their business is versus everybody else that they're competing with? The day that any business owner takes them into a position where their business becomes a commodity with their competition, everything becomes price-driven at that point in time. So the key to get around that price question, and obviously every time you talk to a customer, they're always going to try and drive the price, but the key to get around that is to develop your business, brand yourself as a differentiator in whatever you're doing. And that can be in a number of different ways, but the key is that you always need to be in a position that when you sit down with somebody and say, yes, I understand you think I do legal work, you think I do accounting work, so on and so forth, but here's what I'm really about. And that differentiator has got to be all about the branding of that particular individual in that company.
I agree, and I think part of the big challenge for people is they're afraid to say what the difference is because they feel like they're leaving out that other group. And I hear that often. They're basically afraid of niching themselves. Well, if I say that I don't do legal services, even though that's a part of something I could do, but I really wanted to concentrate on the marketing aspect, but I have all these legal questions come up, then I'm pushing out people who could pay me for legal services. Like they struggle with that a lot, which we both know that that's deeper than just the money aspect of it, but it comes up so frequently.
Absolutely. And that's part of the understanding the market that you want to deal with and live in, because again, if you want to live in the market that you're putting yourself out as a commodity and feel as though, well, if I'm the person that can do it all, then you're going to constantly be in a price competitive situation. If you want to build your niche and say, okay, this is what I do, but here's how I do it differently, and if it's a smaller market, and I understand it's a smaller market, but you're now targeting that specific market, you're going to pull yourself away from a lot of that price competition.
I agree with that. That's a really extremely good point. So one last question from me before we open it up to the callers to jump in with their questions. What are some of the characteristics of an ideal client for you or your firm, because I know your firm is larger than yourself, that you would look for that would identify for our followers that may be a good fit for clients for you? What are some of the characteristics that you're looking for that says, yep, right there, I need to help you?
Okay. Yeah, as you indicated, I mean, my firm, I've got 220 partners nationwide. We have just in our metro New York, New Jersey region 15 partners. And typically what we work with are business owners, very often entrepreneurs, but our sweet spot for us would be business sizes from about $3 million in revenue. We go as high as $75 million, but typically 40 to $50 million is the top. And what we do is we provide chief financial officer services, very strategic services, not necessarily the accounting type services that a bookkeeper or controller would do on a day-to-day basis. But we do the higher level CFO services so that we can help that business owner from a strategic perspective get past barriers, help them understand their marketplace, and really help identify where the growth potential is going to be.
That's awesome. And are you're picking out the gaps as well as the barriers, but are you training any of their current financial teams or staff that they have, or are you really coming in to be the fixer, for lack of a better phrase, and then back out?
We actually, that is part of what we do. I mean, one of the first steps when we first work with a new client is we kind of do an overall review and audit of their financial infrastructure. In many cases, one of the reasons why we are brought in by the CEO or the president of the company is because their particular financial department doesn't have the skill sets needed to take that company to the next level. So we are brought in to help work with the people in the financial department and educate them, help increase their skill sets so that we can help grow that company.
That's awesome. That is super amazing. Well, we have quite a few callers on here, Stu, so we're going to hope no one's being shy, because we know that everyone wants to tap into this wealth of knowledge that you have ready to pour out for us and open it up for questions. Anyone who has a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and if two of you start talking at the same time, I'm hanging up on one of you. No, I'm joking. Just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your questions. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to jump in with the emailed questions that we got, just in case perhaps you are unavailable to actually speak, because I know this is a 30-minute in the middle of your day, and a lot of you are professionals and are at work. I'll make sure that we ask some really good questions for you from the ones who emailed them ahead of time, so it's always a good idea to do that in case you can't speak because you're at work.
Or if they're like me, they forgot to hit the star for the pound.
Right. I was wondering that myself. Okay, I'll jump right in with questions. Sometimes it has to break the ice a little bit for everyone. All right, we have quite a few questions that were emailed, and I don't want to use all of the email questions, but we'll start there. We have Dante, it looks like B. We won't give out his last name. He says, Stu, I was really impressed with the bio markup on the Kickstart Success, and you look like someone I need to talk to. I'm embarking in the business field as a consultant. On one hand, reaching out, and I won't go into specifics, but I have 3 months of professional savings with 2 companies as clients that have all but signed the dotted line for the contract to get started with me as a consultant. The total that I would bring in with working with these 2 clients is almost 2/3 my current professional salary. Do you think it's safe to go all in and leave my job?
The answer is it safe? There's no such thing as 100% safe, by the very fact that I guess the key words that I heard there that gave me a little bit of concern is that he's got 2 potential clients that are ready to sign but have not yet signed. I can't tell you how many opportunities that I've seen in my career where you think you've got a sale wrapped up, and you go back for that final signature, you pick up the deposit check, and all of a sudden there's a change in circumstances. So the answer is that until you have those signatures and any initial deposits from your 2 clients, I would be very cautious on the approach. If it's something you can do still within the realm of working your W-2 job, I would suggest you do that. But if you feel you want to take the plunge, I mean, obviously it sounds like they're further ahead in the game than many entrepreneurs that just kind of, open their doors and say, okay, let's now start doing business. They've got 2 good prospects, and if what he's looking to do is just jump in head first, then I would suggest go ahead and do it. But just be very cautious that don't assume that those 2 opportunities are done deals at this point.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Dante, I have to say, my husband, who's not a financial guru, but is definitely highly discerned, has warned me many a times, and I wasn't quick to listen because he's also the VP of our company, but when I don't want to listen, I choose the husband side. And he's told me, do not get excited until the money goes into the account, period. Especially when it comes to prioritizing that contract over maybe some of the other smaller ones, because those bigger contracts are going to take a lot more of your manpower, your human capital, whatever it is you're working with, if you're not a solopreneur. And I've definitely not listened to him a few times saying, no, I've had this conversation, we've warmed up, we're past that. It's just to go back to what Stu said earlier, that red tape that we have to get through, but it's all but a go. And I've even done really silly things, like kind of started working with the client before things were done. Of course, this was in my earlier entrepreneur days. But I jumped in and was giving a lot, and the red tape held on for a really long time to the point that I had to pull back. And that was a client that got free services really out of me. And I've had some clients that eventually did come on, but they were getting a lot more than they were supposed to, because I was, kind of working with them and massaging the relationships by offering assistance that would have been a part of the contract before we had officially signed everything. And those were all based on my insecurities. At the end of the day, it came down to me wanting to make sure I held on to them, and I wasn't willing to ride it out with those appropriate boundaries. So I would second what Stu said, and just really, really think about that before you jump. Unless you just, you made your mind up and you're going for it anyway.
Exactly. And the other piece, that depending on who those two prospects are, I've seen circumstances, if you're dealing with big business, you can even have a purchase order in hand with a signed contract, but yet by the time you actually get paid, some large companies out there are not paying for 60 to 90 days. So while, Dante thinks that he's got a signed deal in front of him and he can start work, doing the work and getting paid are obviously two different sets of circumstances.
Absolutely, and it can definitely wreak some havoc if you have to get supplies and, other costs that you have to put out to work with that client, and you're kind of getting yourself all ready and prepared and it doesn't come through. That's a huge headache. And like you said, you deal with a lot of big companies that have these larger delays, probably because of just their time frame, their red tape, whatever it is. Maybe they're gaining interest on the money in the accounts. That's always a question for me. Why are they waiting 90 days to pay me when I know they have the money?
I think, and this is just my own personal belief, I think to a certain degree, number one, as you said, that they're waiting to hold on to the money to get whatever interest they can get out of it. But to me, I just think it's a matter of just being disorganized internally. There's so many different departments that have to do sign-offs on a lot of these larger projects that it just sits on somebody's desk for 4 or 5 days and got to go to another person and another person. And by the time it goes through the whole process, it could be weeks and weeks, and then it's got to go to the accounts payable department, and then they have to set it up in the system and so on and so forth. So it's just one of those aggravating processes.
That is super aggravating. All right, let's jump in with Lindsay T. Lindsay emailed and said, I have a manufacturing business with 8 employees, and the new Obamacare insurance laws that were just signed in means that we have to consider serious downsizing because of the high cost of the health care mandated for small businesses. Any recommendations, Stu, on how I can cut costs without cutting out wages? That's a pretty big question.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's obviously a tough question. If it relates to the way she runs her business and a generic way of cutting costs, obviously I don't know enough about her business to answer that. If her question relates more specifically to offering health benefits to the employees, there are several ways to go about doing that. One of the most popular ways that a lot of companies are doing now is offering a flat rate to employees that is affordable by the company, and then allowing the employees to purchase up from that. So they would offer several different benefit programs to the employees with a flat rate of maybe $200 or $300 a month, and then if an employee wanted additional coverage over that base program, the employee would contribute the difference. And that's one way that the business owner can control their costs, because now they've got a fixed rate in place. And then At the same time, they're offering the ability for each of the employees to decide how much coverage they want. And, employees who want more coverage, it'll come out of their pocket, but they still have the option to do so. So it gives the flexibility to the employee, but yet the control to the employer.
So is this kind of like a base package plan that the employer is offering where it has, some baseline, basic medical, basic dental, whatever the components are of the compensatory plan, but it's very, very basic. And then, if there's an employee who says, well, you know what, I want to be able to get fertility treatments, or another employee says, well, I have this other ailment which is going to require a higher number of specialist visits, so they can add on kind of a la carte after that and pay for it out of their own pocket?
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense on multiple levels. So here's a scary question. This is totally from me. And, of course, at any time, guys, interrupt me, jump in with your questions for Stu, because I'm a talker, and he knows I can keep him for hours. I've done it before. But Stu, for entrepreneurs, this is a little nerve-wracking, especially if you are a smaller business, and you're an entrepreneur, and you may have a good amount of income coming in on a semi-regular basis. You and I both know that when you're invoice-based, you're depending on people actually paying their invoices in a timely fashion, whatever that time frame is. But often those things that come in by invoice that are not automatic deductions kind of get pushed to the back of the list when company monies get tight, or they're doing some downsizing or even outsourcing or other things that they're doing. But for an entrepreneur with these new laws and all the requirements that are in, you're less likely to hire people, even if technically by your gross income you could bring people in. But now that it's mandatory for you to have to give health insurance of any kind versus, being able to send them to an exchange as an individual, that may impact the economy in a little bit of a different way than I think was initially planned for. Is there anything entrepreneurs that don't have big budgets, $30,000 a month to spend on benefits for their employees?
Yeah, there's an industry out there called PEO, Professional Employers Organization. Mm-hmm. It's becoming more and more popular, particularly in the last couple of years since Obamacare has kind of become so prevalent. The basis of a PEO is called a co-employment relationship, so that the employees of the company are shared with the employee, or become also employees of the PEO organization. And from a legal perspective, there's a lot of innuendos, and I won't go into the details of it, but from a perspective, what's nice about it is a PEO can come in, offer benefit packages, and typically a good-sized PEO can offer somewhere between 8 to 10 different benefit packages to the employees of a small company. And again, they can do it where the company pays a fixed rate, and then the employee can buy up to all the different the packages that are available out there. But the nice feature about a PEO is the PEO has thousands and thousands. Some of the larger PEOs can have 250,000 co-employees in their overall base that are now part of the overall underwriting for the PEO and for the individual employers. So the rates that are coming through are generally more attractive to those smaller entities, and there's other benefits that a PEO can offer to them, reducing compliance and some of the liability issues that a lot of the small business owners are also concerned about. So if nobody's ever heard of a PEO, there are a number of them out there. I suggest Google Professional Employers Organization, or if you like to contact me, Naketa has my contact information, and I can put you in touch with a couple of the really strong ones out there.
Absolutely. I think that will be excellent, because that's a huge thing for entrepreneurs when they're worried about, having more hands on deck to take on bigger clients, to build deeper relationships, to do more. But then they're nervous because of all these new liabilities where the entrepreneurs are being treated like smaller corporations with, who typically have bigger budgets and higher, I might be misspeaking, so please correct me, but that ability to write off a lot more, because there's corporate welfare, there's all kinds of things that bigger companies get that entrepreneurs, when they're smaller, by no means have access to.
Sure, and not only that, but the bigger companies have access to the professionals that know their way around that particular, the requirements of those compliance and liability issues. Smaller business owners, they're focused on their day-to-day business. They don't understand what Obamacare is bringing from a compliance perspective. They don't know, what potentially lies around the corner that can hit them.
Absolutely. This is why we need you in our lives. So why don't you have a whole different team just dedicated just for our small entrepreneurs, because selfishly this is me asking, because we need you in our lives. I want you to consider that.
Okay, fair enough.
Does anybody have any more questions for Stu? We have one more from David S., and then I have a wrap-up question of my own, but please, by all means, if you have questions for Stu Lipkin, he is a financial guru. Jump in and ask your questions. So David S. asks, and this is a question that's personal for you, Stu. He says, were you nervous the first time you considered leaving corporate America to become an entrepreneur? I noticed that you work with a firm now. Not sure if you're still considered an entrepreneur based on that. How did you handle your anxiety? So he has two separate questions in there.
And that's a great question. I guess the second part of the question is, am I still considered an entrepreneur? I am, from the perspective that I need to go out and develop my own business. I have clients I have to service, but that still doesn't mean that I can. I've got new clients being handed to me. So every partner within the firm has got an obligation to do their own business development and service clients, which makes a bit of a challenge because it's constantly a balancing act to do. Do I go out and pick up new business today? Do I service existing clients? The first part of his question, was I nervous? Not only was I nervous, I was actually panicked. When I first joined the firm was back in 2009, and I'm sure most people on this call remember what 2009 was like related to the economy. I was talking to business owner after business owner that year, and everybody understood the value we could bring to their company, but because of what was going on in the economy, nobody was willing to pull that trigger and spend another dime out of their company. Everybody was looking to cut costs, and not one person was looking to expand their expenses. So for that first year, I was, as I said, I was in a panic situation. And then I guess I was fortunate because I was about 9-10 months working with the firm, and I just hit on a great opportunity that took me from 0 to 100 miles an hour almost overnight. And from that point on, things just kept on developing. So I was very fortunate.
That is very fortunate, but that's scary because I remember the crisis happened roughly in around 2008. So you took a jump in a really significant, time period where most people were holding on to their tethers as much as they possibly could. So that was pretty serious.
Yes, it was. And in retrospect, probably also very dumb, but it is what it is.
Listen, no risk, no reward. I don't know who said it, but it holds true, right?
Exactly right.
So, Stu, what is a good read that you recommend all aspiring and experienced entrepreneurs pick up immediately?
There's a book that I kind of, my personal philosophy, it's a book by Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. It's called Start With Why, and it's all about branding your business. And it kind of goes back to one of the initial questions we talked about earlier today, is what do you need to do to differentiate yourself in business?
This is awesome. I'm writing that down as we speak because that's not one I heard of, so I want to read it.
Yes, it's a very interesting book, and to a certain degree it's unfortunate because the author, I think, was in love with Steve Jobs because all he does in the book is talk about Apple and how Apple was able to brand itself and differentiate itself, and he makes a lot of great points related to Apple, but there's so much above and beyond, what's happened out in the marketplace out there beyond Apple. But the concept of what Apple was able to do in branding and how that was able to differentiate themselves in the market and take them out of that competitive, market where, a computer is a computer is a computer. People very much understood that Apple was not just a computer, and they were paying a premium for those.
Absolutely. I'm excited, and I'm a big fan of Steve Jobs, just his life and, some of the great quality that he brought to the world through his risk.
Right.
And, even his failures, honestly. The things that other people would have walked away from him because of, and the different mountains he had to climb that people thought he was crazy for even tackling are pretty inspirational.
Absolutely.
On multiple levels. All right, if there are no questions from anyone, I am kicking you all off the call except for Stu. As always, I encourage you all to step out of your bubble and peek out of your shell and ask the experts how to kickstart your success. Stop trying to do it alone. That is when you make the most intentional mistakes. The unintentional ones are perfect and they're great for learning. But those intentional ones that came because of your pride, your ego, or your lack of ability to come out of your shell and ask the experts, those will get you into deeper trouble than you need. How do I know? Because I've lived through it and I've done it. I want you all to submit your questions in advance to AskNaketa@BigPro.com, as some of you have already done. And make sure you book in your appointment calendar. July 16th at noon is our next Kickstart Success call. I want to thank you, Stu, for joining us. Don't hang up. Everyone else, you're allowed to. And I look forward to helping you all dominate in your life and business.
Thank you, Naketa.
Thank you.